What is up, Bengals fam? It's your boy Mike coming back at you with another Who Daily, and I've got the man who every time he comes on the show, the IQ level of the cast triples, John Sheeran. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's exciting, right? We're going to play real games. The Bengals are going to play real games that matter. The NFL players who get paid to do it are going to run around and hit each other and catch footballs. It's going to be great. Everyone's getting into it. Wanted to start off, though. We'll get to some of your predictions. We'll get to some specific Steeler Week matchups and stuff like that. But as I was prepping for you to come on today, realized you dropped a new article, Cincy Jungle's John Sheeran. Every Bengals publication should hire this guy to write. John, what did you give us? Give us the 1-2. Everybody, go check out the article. By the way, I'll link it in the video description. But yeah, what were you getting at conclusion-wise for looking at the rookies?
Yeah, very high praise for an article that I kind of delayed for about a week and a half. It was supposed to be like a wrap-up of what the rookies did in the preseason and just the offseason, but it became time to be like, hey, we're a couple days away from the season. Let's get a primer up for all the rookies who are on the roster, on injured reserve, and on the practice squad. So the Bengals have 13 rookies technically rostered, whether or not they're healthy or not. 4 of them are on the active roster right now. Obviously, Dax Hill, you got Cordell Volson as the starter. You got Jeff Gunter and Zach Carter as reserves on the defensive line. Then you got Tyson Anderson, Cam Taylor-Britt. They're on IR. That rounds out the draft class. And you have a couple of undrafted rookies on season-ending injured reserve as well. And then you obviously have guys like Alan George and Kwame Lassiter, amongst others, who are on the practice squad as first-year players. But yeah, I think it was just laying out the expectations for some of these guys and where the roles are right now. And I wanted to revisit those same roles, or like what I had right now towards the end of the season or at season's end, like see how they evolved and whatnot. And with Dax Hill, obviously everyone wants to start with him, just shine on all levels in the preseason as, I think right now, the first defensive back off the bench. And that could just be at slot cornerback. It could be at free safety. It could be as an overhang defender playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. The Bengals didn't really hold back to see like what he could do on all these different roles in the preseason, and there wasn't really a place where he looked out of place. And I think that bodes well for him, just getting on the field as soon as possible. And, you know, Mike, I remember when the draft was happening and he was the pick, it was, yeah, this guy's really good, but what is the role going to be with him immediately? How does this make sense from a short-term perspective? And when you know, can play well at all these different roles and display good value in just doing a bunch of different things and not just being pigeonholed in one position, you should have a role immediately, because you need players like that, because injuries are going to happen. You have rotations in the backfield. You have guys you can keep guys fresh with him rotating in and out. So it was really intriguing to see how well Dax was just handling all these roles at the same time and just playing fast and playing free. And that was really nice to see.
Yeah, I think Lou Anarumo, during the draft process, I remember the pick, right? And I did my shows in and around the draft and talked about it quite a bit. And what I told my viewer, my audience, is basically slow down on this is a replacement for Jesse Bates thing. I think if the Bengals have their druthers, you know, Jesse Bates ends up back on this roster, they have both of those guys long term. I think that's the ideal situation. I don't know how realistic it is, but at the end of the day, Lou Anarumo, if you look at the way the Bengals draft as Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator, with Lou, you can almost see what he likes just by the players he brings in, which is, you got to be able to do more than one thing, because I'm going to ask you to do more than one thing. I'm going to put you in advantageous positions, and the more versatility you have, it's like he values versatility. If you look at the defensive line, right, like especially the rookies, the younger guys that have been drafted since Lou came in the Zach Taylor era, it's been very athleticism off the charts, right? They draft crazy good athletes, and they ask these athletes to do lots of different things, because when you're that athletic, you should be able to, right? And if we can coach you up and get you to learn the defense, you should be able to do that. The Bengals have a really good problem on their hands, which is, can you still hear that?
A little bit.
Buddy. When you look at the Bengals, you look at the Bengals rookies, they have they're in a really good position. They're not going to be asking a lot out of hardly any of them except for one guy, and his evaluation will be very simple, because if he's not starting by the end of the year, he's messed it up, right? And that's Cordell Volson. Dax Hill is probably going to be rotated. The rest of the guys are going to be rotational. Even Cam Taylor-Britt, if he comes back, like to your point in your article, he's not. There was never an open competition between he and Eli Apple. That's Eli Apple's spot, and deservedly so. I agree with you on that. I'm gonna wait till this guy's done because it's driving me crazy, and I don't know how much is gonna be in the background. He's just do it.
Yeah, so he's like just right there. Yeah,
he's right outside my window. Dude, go away. No. It's literally the absolute hottest time of day right now. I have no idea why he would want to be out here doing this. So the Bengals will know. The Bengals will know for sure, and the fans, it'll be very obvious. If Cordell Volson isn't up to snuff, then we're going to see Max Sharping in there. And I say that, like, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the Bengals have really one specific rookie starter that they're asking to contribute, which is Cordell Volson. I think that Cordell Volson has a very short leash because of Max Sharping having starting experience, the salary he's making, almost $3 million a year that he's bringing in, and his experience. I think that the Bengals would be very comfortable once Max Sharping comes in and learns the offense of having Cordell Volson on a pretty short leash. What do you think?
I don't know, because Volson's been here for the entire offseason. He's done everything that they asked. Blah 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 blah, like the typical jargon that you hear. And he's played fairly well. Now, for a rookie who was a 4th-round pick who's never played anywhere close to this level of competition, it's been about as good as you could expect. And it really is just a testament to how terrible Jackson Carman has been in comparison, right? So I do think that the claiming of Sharping was them seizing an opportunity of a guy that they really liked coming out of college, a guy that Frank Pollock was familiar with in the scouting process. And he is, without a doubt, like the best first lineman off the bench that they've had in quite some bit. Like, they haven't had that level of depth in a while because, like you said, he was a starter in this league for 3 years, and he was a decent one. Like, it wasn't anything to write home about, but he was a 2nd-round pick, and he comes with talent. And like Sharping, he came from a small school, and he needed those years and time of development, and now he's kind of hopefully hitting his stride. So I think it's great security to have him behind a rookie. I do think that with this first month, I don't think it's going to be the first few mistakes that Volson makes. He's going to be out for Sharping, regardless if Sharping is comfortable within the system yet. Maybe as the season goes on and we're not seeing the progress that he makes, maybe then that's the discussion. But I think that they want to give Volson time and space to just acclimate himself as a starter. It's surely not going to be Jackson Carman being thrown back in there at this point. It seems like if there is to be an offensive lineman cut for space, he might be that guy, even though they would take some type of a cap penalty. But I'm going to see what it is in October, November. If Volson's struggling, maybe then there's a conversation. But I think the leash is fine for now, I guess, for him.
How big of a deal is it that the Bengals starting 5 offensive line unit have yet to take a live game snap together?
I think that is somewhat of a big deal for sure. The whole thing with the preseason now, starters barely play, and week 1 in general, it's kind of a mess at times. Like, you're seeing these guys play for the first time. It's live action for the first time. Guys are going to make mistakes. For as good of an offensive line coach that we make out of Frank Pollock, there were still a lot of communication errors last year. Maybe that's due to the fact that the offensive line wasn't that good. But yeah, continuity takes time and reps and everything. And it's good that they've been practicing together for the last couple of weeks. And I'm sure those reps against the Rams in practice helped. But yeah, when the chips are down and it's actual game time, it's a whole different ball game. So they will definitely need some time to really get comfortable with one another, and that could lead to mistakes against a really good pass rush in the Steelers. Even though the talent's still there, like, you still need time to establish some continuity.
What do you think going into week 1 against the Steelers? What matchups are you paying attention to? I mean, the obvious one is going to be how that offensive line performs. Can Joe Burrow keep a clean? How many clean pockets does Joe Burrow throw from? It's going to be kind of what I'm watching. What are you looking at?
So I think the respect for TJ Watt is obviously insane, and the Bengals clearly had that last year, just for his entire career. Just last year, I remember in that blowout win against the Steelers, like, they had Uzama essentially being a 6th pass protector on offense, and they made Watt rush the passer for like 4 or 5 seconds, which is why he was blanked. So I'm interested to see if they leave La'el Collins on an island, because Hayden Hurst is a very good receiver, but there's obviously a drop off in his blocking ability. Maybe they have Drew Sample filling that role, or maybe they just trust La'el and they go a little bit more empty because they have more confidence in the offensive line. But beyond that, I think the only way that the Steelers can keep this close is if Mitchell Trubisky just absolutely goes ham and utilizes that pretty solid trio of receivers that he has, including now the addition of George Pickens. They're going to move Trubisky out of the pocket. They're going to try to just fully unleash this Matt Canada offense that they couldn't do with a corpse and Ben Roethlisberger at quarterbacks. But Trubisky's got legs, and he's got a better arm than I think most people give him credit for. So he can sling it down the field, and they're going to have to rely on some of those big plays against the Bengals secondary that should be apt to defend it because of who they practice against. But how these cornerbacks match up against Steelers receivers, like that's their biggest strength on offense, even with Najee Harris at running back. It's going to be the only way I think the Steelers can stay in this game and keep it close. If the Bengals secondary does this job, then it could be another blowout.
John, you take a look at you look at the PFF grade. This defense, I've been hearing all offseason, is supposed to be really good, and I'm sure Mike Tomlin will figure out a way, like he usually does, to make them pretty good. But people forget, this is the worst rushing defense in the league last year. There was a game Joe Mixon put up like 160 yards against them. Their secondary isn't good. I mean, if you look at the PFF grades, if the Steelers ever find themselves in a position where either of these linebackers are covering Hayden Hurst, I feel bad for them. So, I mean, just looking at where they could have advantages, the only thing I can think of is if the Bengals just completely forget TJ Watt exists and don't block Cam Hayward, or maybe Volson isn't good enough to block Cam Hayward yet. I don't know, but it just seems like they're going to need a couple of turnovers. The Steelers, that is. They're going to need a couple of turnovers. They're going to need Mitch Trubisky to not turn the ball over at all and probably throw for 250 plus and a touchdown or two. It just seems like a lot of stuff you're asking to go right. And I guess that's why the spread's 6.5. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to make this game exciting. It's Steelers week, so it's always going to be exciting for that. But what's the biggest threat you think the Bengals should look out for? Outside, you said Trubisky going off. Obviously, any quarterback going off is going to help a team win. But I mean, is there something in a little more nuanced that we should watch during this?
Not necessarily. I think like the Steelers' offensive line is, just downright garbage. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Like even I think the Steelers know that at this point. They were terrible in training camp, and I don't think anything is saving that. So it sucks for Najee, but he's not going to have a ton of room to run. And I would imagine they will try to involve him in the passing game more like they did last year, but hopefully for their sake more effectively. The Bengals just have an advantage from the defensive line to the Steelers' offensive line. The receivers are far more talented than their cornerbacks. They're just going to need Herculean efforts from their top players, and their defense is one of the most top-heavy defenses in the league. And to their credit, TJ Watt is arguably the best edge rusher in the league. Cam Hayward remains underrated, I think, as one of the three best interior rushes. Minkah Fitzpatrick is better than that 57 PFF score that he got. He intercepted Joe Burrow last year, so like he's still got the juice, and he's still a playmaker. So they need phenomenal performances from those guys, and they need to take advantage of whenever the Bengals slip up in pass pro, or maybe Burrow's just slightly late on his read. Like they need to take advantage of that. So them rushing the ball with Najee 20 times is not going to win them the game. They need Trubisky to attack downfield, maybe get Eli Apple stepping one way while Claypool's running the other way. If George Pickens, a rookie, goes off against Chidobe Awuzie or whoever he's coming up against, that could help them too. But yeah, man, like the Steelers, I don't think are a 3-14 terrible team. Like I don't think they will ever bottom out like that under Mike Tomlin's watch, but there's a clear talent difference and disparity in this matchup for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of ways the Steelers may be able to pull out a win here, I'm going to move on to today's sponsor read. First one ever. Today's episode is brought to you by inconsistent pass interference calls. Need to ensure the small market team doesn't win the big game? Rest assured, there is an inconsistent defensive pass interference call just for you. What are you waiting for? Get your inconsistent pass interference call today. Just find any football game at any time and watch it. Inconsistent pass interference calls, you'll love them or you'll hate them, but they'll always show up when the game's on the line. All right, John, let's go to final score predictions. What do you think? How's this game going to go?
So I think the Bengals will get out in front pretty early. I'm not expecting like a perfect clean game from them at all. Like it's week one. It's really hard to expect that anyways. And I don't think that, again, the Steelers are a terrible team by any means. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers make it a somewhat close game by the end. I think Trubisky's a little bit better than people give him credit for. And just in general, everything is relative, right? Like the Steelers last year made the playoffs with a terrible quarterback. Like, at the end of the day, Ben was just not good. He was a complete liability. Their offensive line was slightly better than it was last year, but it was still pretty bad. They find ways to stay in games. They find ways to win. They didn't last year against the Bengals. In fact, they lost by like a combined 60 points against them. So I don't think that they will find more success this year necessarily. But I could see Mitch and his receivers making a couple plays to keep them kind of close. But I don't think that their defense is talented enough on all levels to completely slow down the Bengals offense. So I'm going to go 27-20 Bengals, and they just barely cover.
Gotcha. I think that the Bengals establish themselves as the true division runs through us type of team this season. I think that what ends up happening is, like Joe Burrow said,
you got to pick your poison. If you're going to play too high, you're going to have to deal with Joe Mixon in the run game, and if you decide to play man, then good luck.
I also think that hints at a little bit more control of the offense for Joe Burrow this year, and maybe a lot more control, as in, I know what I'm looking at, and I now have full control of this offense. There were times still early last year where you could tell he was still being a little bit, like the full playbook wasn't open for offensive line talent reasons, but also just to keep it simple and make it so he can execute on the things he really needs to execute on and get back into the flow of the NFL. I think those shackles are completely taken off Bengals by a million at this point. I don't think it's going to be close. I think they're going to handle it the entire time. The only thing I'll be looking for is, I'm really hoping, and this is going to be the same for every single game, I want the Bengals to be in position for Evan McPherson to try a 65-yard field goal at the end of half. That's all I want. Until next time, I've been Mike. He's been John. This has been Who Daily. See ya.